Welcome to Eugene Cannabis TV. You made the trip. This is the first show of 2015, and I want to hope that everybody had great holidays. We do have an article here about Santa Claus that I wanted to start right off with, so catch everybody up. I found this written by Tyler James. I found this at the thatoregonlife.com, titled "Santa Claus Admits Oregon Has the Best Weed in America." According to MSNBC, High Times Magazine, and many other various sources, Santa Claus has gone on the record to say the beautiful state of Oregon has hands down the best marijuana in the nation. The quality of the weed in Oregon is by far superior to my other stops, said Santa Claus after his long night on delivering presents. Contrary to what everyone says, California does not have the best weed. Don't get me wrong, California has some fine bud. That sour diesel got me darn near drooling on myself. I'll be honest though, I saved the best for last, and that's the state of Oregon. I know when I get to Oregon, my reindeer are going to be flying higher, and when I bring the OG Kush home to Mrs. Claus, you got her doing things that probably make a gay man turn straight. Santa's only complaint was the fact he can't smoke his Oregon bud until he returns to the North Pole. This is due to the fact that he's already paranoid enough as it is, entering homes through the chimney. Among Santa's least favorite places to go were Texas, Mexico, and Nebraska. He mentioned when visiting these areas he won't even touch the dirt weeds left out for him. Santa deserves only the best and shouldn't settle for dried up weed, stems, and seeds. Mr. Claus mentioned he was indeed a huge supporter of Measure 91, and is happy to see Oregonians will no longer have to worry about leaving marijuana out for him. Santa also wanted to make sure and let Oregonians know to keep up the good work on growing the finest weed in America, and most importantly, do not trick him with edible marijuana cookies, as they get him too blazed to finish the job. If you have to leave marijuana edibles, at least leave a note warning Santa they are marijuana cookies. So there you have it, the word from Santa Claus this past season. And we have quite a list of upcoming events we need to keep everybody up on. And the first one I got to mention is actually will be the same night that our show airs. So if you see this on cable, you better be thinking about getting down to this. Anyway, this is a showing of Bringing It Home, Hemp is Hope. That's the hemp movie that's been here before. It's showing at the Bijou, 492 East 13th. And again, that's on Thursday, January 8th. So it'll be the day after our show starts showing. Then we have there's a normal meeting, and that one's coming up January 8th. It starts at 6:30. And that's going to be at the Meg's Marijuana Dispensary in Springfield. That's at 2155 Olympic Street. We really appreciate those folks for letting us use their facility for our meetings. This is what we call our moving meetings. Our first meeting is with the Cannabis LLC dispensary. The second meeting was at the Compassion Center, the clinic in Eugene. And now this is our third meeting, and it'll be at another dispensary at Meg's Marijuana in Springfield. So again, that's at 6:30. January 13th, OSU Richard Hall. This is at Oregon State University, Richard Hall at 107. Andrea Herman, the OSU eCampus industrial hemp professor and a Canadian hemp farmer, is having a free discussion. And again, I'll be showing that movie, Bringing It Home, Hemp is Hope. And then on the 17th, Saturday the 17th, is the Emerald Empire Hemp Fest volunteer meeting. We'll give you more info on that when we figure out what we're going to meet at. The normal meeting, the Willamette Valley normal meeting on the 22nd. It'll be our fourth moving meeting, and we'll be looking for a place for that. We'll be announcing that one. That's on January 22nd. And again on the 22nd, the Oregonians for Industrial Hemp public meeting at the World Cafe at 449 Blair Boulevard from 5:30 to 7:30. So that's a meeting to be sure you put in your calendar. That's again January 22nd at the World Cafe on Blair. You'll see the industrial. Let's see, it's They're talking about it'll be industrial hemp be in Oregon in 2015, and find out what's going on about that. And then January 22nd, again on Thursday, this is at 7 p.m. at McMinnon's Hotel Oregon in McMinnville. This is a celebration of the passage of Measure 91 and a fundraiser for the next Oregon legislature for Compassionate Oregon. Compassionate Oregon is a political action committee dedicated to protecting the rights of medical marijuana patients and their families. Check that out on their website at compassionateoregon.org. And then we got the 6th annual Hemp History Week coming up in June 1st through the 7th. We'll be talking more about that as we get closer to it. So that's a quick rundown of the upcoming events coming up the month of January. And if you need more information on that, send me a mail at dankbagman@hotmail.com, and I'll get that info to you. So I wanted to jump in. This was an interesting story out of Medford. Councilman stirs online dust-up with anti-marijuana post. This is written by Greg Stiles, and it was in the Medford Trial Tribune, December 31st, 2014. Ongoing Medford City Councilman John Michaels took one final potshot in the year's political struggle over marijuana's place in local culture. The West Medford Ward 3 representative, who didn't seek re-election in 2014, made it clear in a Facebook post that he disagreed with the state's electorate who approved a ballot measure legalizing recreational use of marijuana last November. Quote, "So with the passage of the marijuana issue this coming summer, when many of my neighbors are growing their own marijuana plants, I'm going to have some fun," Michaels wrote. "I'm going to grow male hemp plants that will essentially cross-pollinate with everyone's pot plants in the neighborhood and ruin them. I'm tired of all the drugs in West Medford, and I'm feeling evil." This seemingly lighthearted comment touched off a heated debate on the West Medford Resident Group Facebook page. When contacted on Wednesday morning, Michaels declined to elaborate on his post. "I don't want to add fuel to the fire," Michaels said. "It was just a fun throwaway post. It must be a slow news day." When the original post was taken down by a site monitor, it didn't take long for a screenshot to go up and the vitriolic trash talk to continue. "I deleted the post because of the direct attacks to various people that were happening," wrote Jacob Stetcher, a site moderator, in response to a group member questioning the move. Kevin Stein, one of two new city council members representing West Medford, said Wednesday he didn't read much into Michael's words. "Knowing his personality, as soon as I read it, I knew he was poking a joke," Stein said. "I thought he was having fun." Nonetheless, Stein said, drug use, legal and otherwise, remains a topic of intense interest in his ward. "It's a real issue that affects people," Stein said. "It has been banned in the city, but there are people who take it medically prescribed to help better their lives. It's clear he didn't intend to make it personal. Some of the comments that followed were pretty egregious, but it's the internet." Pastor Jason Ziegler went as far as to claim the departing council member was potentially breaking the law. "I'm pretty sure his post shows forethought and malice to destroy legally grown medication. I think the police should do something about that, especially since it's clearly premeditated," Ziegler wrote. For his part, Stein thinks the matter will soon be forgotten. "I think it's already dead," he said. "It's really just a little comment put out there that exploded. Just because people have certain viewpoints of marijuana, I think it's good that people have debates." So there you go, Medford City. That's some of our elected officials having fun with issues that are really important to people. So it's kind of maddening when they kind of make fun of it. I mean, we can laugh at ourselves, and which is a great trait, actually. But when people don't have a clue what they're talking about and then make fun of it, it's a little maddening. And this was a real interesting article. written by Lucas Young, and I found this in the stonerscookbook.com. This is November 4th, 2014. Impairment and drug driving. What does it mean? With legalization movements in full swing across the country, a considerable amount of law is changing, and DUIs are one of them. However, what exactly is considered impaired in the eyes of the law, and how is it measured? Alcohol. When it comes to alcohol, it's clear to both the scientific and law enforcement communities as to what constitutes impairment. This limits the gray area that law enforcement can encounter. The sober society. With marijuana use on the rise, measuring the sobriety of users is becoming a more and more pressing issue. However, the problem is that there are no agreed-upon standards for measuring sobriety. Lost in translation. Most states have adopted a stance similar to alcohol. If more than a predetermined amount of THC is found in your bloodstream, you are deemed impaired. But just how accurate is this measure? The problem. THC metabolizes slowly and can stay in your system for several days, even after the psychoactive effects have worn off. Currently, in 10 states, it is illegal to drive with any THC in your system. Side note, by the way, and that's called guilty by consumption. As egregious as that is, there's actually laws of some states. You can be found guilty of possession of a legal drug if it's found in your system by a drug test. Back to the article. Experienced victims. This most significantly affects experienced users who build up tolerance to the substance, meaning they experience lesser psychoactive effects. Yet, THC stays in their system for a longer time. Side effects of the law. On the top of the measure being inaccurate, it creates an opportunity for law enforcement to punish those who have engaged in legally protected behavior and have not posed any traffic safety threat. Different reactions. Finally, people react differently to marijuana, which seriously questions the credibility of THC testing. However, until better measures are found, these laws will remain in place. The takeaway. Be sure you know what the legal limit is in your state and be sure to comply. So let's face it, the war on drugs is far from over. Even though legalization passed by a 12-point margin in the state of Oregon, it doesn't officially take effect until the 1st of July. So you still got to be careful out there, and you still, it's been a long drug war, and the law enforcement seems to having a little problem with letting go. So we're not out of the woods yet, but things are getting a whole bunch better. Also, I want to remind everybody that we have the website growers2patients.net. That's growers, plural, growers, the number 2, patients, again plural, .net. Growers2patients.net. It's a website that's free to use, and that's for patients, and what it says, for patients to find growers, and for growers to find patients. So if you can need that, hopefully it'll be an avenue to get to what you need. We'll see you next, right back.
If you're an adult who enjoys a good beer, there's a similar product you might want to know about. One without all the calories and serious health problems. Less toxic so it doesn't cause hangovers or overdose deaths, and it's not linked to violence or reckless behavior. Marijuana. Less harmful than alcohol, and time to treat it that way. For more information, visit marijuanaissafer.org.
Welcome back to the second half of Eugene Cannabis TV, our first show, 2015. Hope you'll stay with us all year. There's going to be some interesting things to talk about, and some interesting guests coming up too. I want to start out with a letter to the editor that was written by Leland Berger. Leland Berger is a legalization activist. He's also a criminal defense attorney out of Portland. Is also associated very closely with NORML. And he wrote a letter to the. This was in the on the internet at the OregonLive.com. This is dated the 2nd of January this year. He wrote, Oregon medical marijuana laws. State Senator Ginny Burdick says Measure 91 is, quote, a pretty good draft of, as the Oregonian editorial puts it, just another bill. This end quote. This fundamentally misunderstands that under our state's constitution, the people, through the initiative power, are a co-extensive branch of the legislature. Measure 91 prohibits 3 alterations: allowing homegrown marijuana, not changing the existing DUII prohibition against driving while impaired by marijuana, and not changing the Oregon Medical Marijuana Act because of Measure 91. During the 1999 legislative session, when the committee tasked with implementing the Oregon Medical Marijuana Act considered a bill to recommend to Congress that marijuana be rescheduled from Schedule 1, then committee chair Kevin Mannix announced that, although he opposed any marijuana legalization, he respected the will of the voters and allowed the bill to move to a floor vote. Vox, this is Italian, Vox Populi Vox Dei, the voice of the people is the voice of God. Legislators ought to not alter the medical program to implement the adult use program. Signed, Leland R. Berger, Northeast Portland. So, yeah, definitely a good point. The legislatures, again, we have our legislatures that know nothing about marijuana, nothing about marijuana patients, and yet they're working on marijuana laws. So that's the way it is, and that's what we're faced with, and that's what we're stuck with. That's why we encourage people to come to our normal meetings, our Willamette Valley normal chapter meetings. It's still coming up, as I mentioned, Thursday, January 8th. Next one will be the 22nd after that, January 22nd. Find out what you can do to help to try to save our all our marijuana laws. I just came across this, and after we had Caleb on the show, I wished we'd had it when he was here. I contacted him, and I haven't received word back, but Caleb was on our show in fact, our last show, before we took the time off, I think it was. And anyway, he has Tourette Syndrome. And he talked about how marijuana has helped him. He moved from Kentucky to Oregon because of our medical marijuana program. Not only was he in constant danger, working against the law by actually using it in Kentucky, he also was tired of the stigma. So anyway, this was, I came across this. Now this turned out it was written a year ago. I found it on truthonpot.com. It's titled Medical Marijuana and Tourette's Syndrome. Truthonpot.com. In 1984, a French neurologist published an account of 9 patients with similar symptoms of an unknown disorder that dubbed maladie des tices. His name was Georges Gilles de la Tourette, and his early account of this tic-related disorder made him the first to identify what is known today as Tourette Syndrome. Although Tourette Syndrome is often depicted by the media as someone who can't stop cursing and shouting obscene thoughts, most patients with TS experience have much milder symptoms. Nevertheless, patients with TS whose symptoms are moderate to severe often find pharmaceutical treatments to be unsatisfactory. But scientists now know that pharmacists are not the only option for patients with TS. In recent years, anecdotal evidence and a few small studies have showed that medical marijuana may be able to improve both the tics and behavioral problems associated with TS. What is Tourette Syndrome? Tourette Syndrome is an inherited disorder characterized by repetitive compulsive actions known as tics. TS begins in childhood and tends to improve as the sufferer reaches early adulthood. It frequently occurs alongside other behavioral problems such as obsessive compulsive behavior, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, autoaggression, depression, and anxiety. Tics are essential to Tourette's syndrome and can be either motor or vocal. Sniffing, grunting, blinking, and shrugging are all examples of common tics. Patients with TS describe the urge to perform a tic as a feeling of mounting tension or stress, which can only be relieved by carrying out the tic. How can marijuana help? Although a substantial amount of anecdotal evidence exists for the treatment of TS with medical marijuana, very few scientific studies have ever been conducted. Our search of numerous medical databases revealed only 2 clinical studies, both published by German researcher Dr. Müller-Vittil and her team of scientists. The first study was published in 2002 and involved 12 patients given a single oral dose of THC. The second study was published a year later and involved 24 patients monitored over a 6-week period. Both studies were successful in showing that THC was associated with tic reduction, and although the studies were unable to prove any impact on behavioral problems, evidence from case reports suggests that medical marijuana can help with THS associated symptoms of obsessive compulsive behavior, autoaggression, attention span, and impulse control. Unfortunately, despite these positive findings, no clinical trials have been conducted since 2003. How does it work? Scientists still haven't figured out the underlying neurological mechanisms that cause TS, although there are a few theories. One of the theories suggests that too much dopamine may be the cause of the tics. If this were true, the strong interactions that exist between the encapitoid system and the dopamine release might explain why marijuana helps to reduce tics. Experts' recommendations. In an article published in the Federal Opinion on Pharmacotherapy journal, Dr. Mueller van Val outlines her recommendations for the treatment of Tourette syndrome with marijuana-based medication. If a patient with TS finds treatment with traditional pharmaceuticals to be ineffective, Mueller-Val believes THC pills or Marinol could be considered as an alternative treatment. Patients should be given a starting dosage of 1 to 2 milligrams per day, which can be solely, anyway, I'm going into all that, but it says patients using THC pills or other forms of medical marijuana should be monitored closely for side effects or adverse conditions. Common side effects include dizziness, dryness, dry mouth, and anxiety and panic in rare cases. So anyway, that's a little bit more about Tourette syndrome, and it was really interesting to have Caleb on the other day, and we hope to have him back again and tell us about his experiences. And then I wanted to jump into the interesting story out of Texas. Ordinarily, it's no big deal, I guess, what happens in another state, especially that far away, but it's kind of humorous in some ways because we had the same problem here during this last election. This is an article that was in the website waoi.com, which is a radio station out in the Midwest, or out in Texas, of course. Texas sheriffs to fight marijuana decriminalization. This is dated the 1st of January 2015. The Texas Sheriff's Association says it will fight hard to block efforts in the upcoming legislative session to decriminalize the possession of small amounts of marijuana, demonstrating that the move toward lighter punishments for pot possession are not inevitable, as supporters claim, News Radio 1200 WAOI reports. Quote, the Sheriff's Association position is that we are going to oppose any effort to decriminalize marijuana or legalize medical marijuana or any of the components of marijuana, Brazos County Sheriff Chris Clark told News Radio 1200 WOAI, quote, of course, we will vigorously oppose any effort to legalize marijuana, unquote. A bill to turn possession of less than an ounce of marijuana into essentially a parking ticket with a fine of no more than $100, has been introduced in the session that begins January 13th. No marijuana legalization bill has been introduced. And by the way, as a side note, that's pretty much what Oregon received in 1976. So Texas is a little way behind us. But Sheriff Clark says that that is the direction decriminalization bills are going. Quote, the next step is to legalize the use of medical marijuana for medical purposes, he said. Once all that is done, then they come back and try to legalize marijuana for any use. While some 18 states now allow marijuana use for medical purpose, the effort to expand those laws have stalled. Supporters of marijuana decriminalization argue that jails and prisons are overflowing with young people, mainly minorities, who have committed no other crime than possessing illegal drugs. They argue that arrest and incarceration are such nonviolent offenses ruins the lives of these individuals and essentially forces them to become career criminals. But Kirk says that is not the true story. Quote, there are not only social but criminal justice concerns for the use and abuse of marijuana, he said. It is illegal in Texas, and we would like to stay that way. So anyway, there you go from Texas. So anyway, we had our own Sheriff's Association opposing Measure 91, our legalization initiative. They were going to have this great big tour, and they got their hands slapped when they found out that they were planning on spending public money to fight it, and that's illegal. So they backed off and kept their tour back quite a bit, but they still said a lot of egregious things and said, you know, the same old myths, you know, about a gateway drug and, you know, on and on and on. But everything they come up with has been debunked long ago. So anyway, thanks for watching the show. We'll be back next week, and that's Eugene Cannabis TV. So we'll see you next time. I'll be here, and I hope you will be too.